Um, this is a mess of a vlog, and I kind of think about it. I woke up yesterday wanting to talk about Aries, of all places, and just Aries, not like Jupiter in Aries, just Aries. And then today I wanted to talk about Mercury in Capricorn, or just Mercury. And I remembered I had this like I want to do something, but I'm not sure what, and I'm angry and all that, like for no reason. And then I remembered the like my new moon video, and my new moon video was basically my new moon video was basically talking about this tension between Jupiter in Aries and basically the new moon and the sun in Capricorn, with Mercury in its shade period, Venus in Capricorn, and that tension was expressed for me as not knowing what to do. Like, should I talk about Aries? Because I want to talk about Aries and the I am, and I wanted to do Rene Descartes' chart, and I have it open. When he actually has Jupiter, Uranus, Rahu, and what was the other one? I think either Pluto or yeah, Jupiter, Uranus, Rahu, and Pluto in Aries. And you think about Rene Descartes, it was the self-definition of, I think, therefore I am, and Aries is the head. And I was like, oh, let's talk about Rene Descartes. But that's like, and then I was like, but that's pretty much what I have to say about him, unless they go, research with me or something like that. Um, so, and the thing that there was Rahu there, so there was the desire to have a self-definition, and it was based on cognition, on thinking, and it was, I guess, a revolutionary one at the time. Um, and that was Rene Descartes, and the whole I am aspect. I had a post, I think, about Aries, and its square to Pluto, and sort of a kind of a, yeah, square to Pluto, and the story between them. And I thought about Aries, the asteroid Aries in Aries. I would definitely need to do research about times when she were in, other signs. But Aries in general is seen as kind of the equivalent to Pluto, and she was seen as the one who demoted Pluto. And in Aries, it was like it, it, it's not that she demoted Pluto so much as she was just there. She's like, I am. I exist. I am like you. And then why does that mean, like, like they could decide that Aries is a planet? Why did they decide that, Pluto is down? And then I thought about themes. And what Aries stands for is the marginalized society and the marginalized individuals in Aries, because it's individual. It's the I am. It's many people, it's the self definition of, perhaps certain nations, even. I would need to look into politics for that. Um, that would demand a self definition suddenly in these times. Um, or, certain, well, I guess on social level, we see that in genders or certain genders, new genders appearing, or defining yourself by something that you didn't define yourself before. Um, so, for example, I think about alternative sexuality, and then we have certain definitions that are not just for sexuality, that apply to your personality as well. So, kind of standing for those self definitions, but also for a sense of autonomy, the individual rights in general. If I'm not mistaken, Immanuel Kant had also prominent Aries placements. I would need to do his chart as well. Um, and as you can see, we begin with Aries, right? Because Aries is the first, right? Um, and that notion that the mind is able to conceive one truth that is general. And this is very interesting about Aries because it is about the individual, it's about the one. But when you talk about Jupiter in Aries, it's about oneness as a belief. Like there is one truth. There is also it's not a totally relativistic worldview. So that I find interesting. And for Aries, with an E in Aries, um, it's more like what I joined with Jupiter that will come to conjunct her, what I believe in, my beliefs, my philosophy. They're not there to demote anyone, but they do make yours irrelevant. Yours as in Pluto. Pluto in, and now Pluto is at the end of Capricorn. Um, and that is, I guess, a call for the places where we had pat, like patronage, plutocracy, paternalism, and this is specifically paternalism. It because Saturn is like this is a Saturn ruled Pluto. Okay, Saturn is the patriarchy basically, um, and what Aries stands for demotes the role of the plutocracy or of the patriarchs. And it's not just you think patriarchy is like, oh, feminist. No, patriarchy was the clergy of the church. Okay, so it's not just the it's not just about this gender, that gender. It's about the structural changes that are all leading us to Pluto and Aquarius when we're going to get decentralized. It doesn't mean that there is no hierarchy, but definitely a demotion of that hierarchy. And how Aries plays into this role, but for Aries to appear in Aries with an A, it's like the I am. I exist. I am an authority. I am sovereign. Um, I think, well, I don't necessarily delineate here. I just think about more analogy than astrology when I give this example because I haven't checked this. But think about the Britney Spears story, where I know that I know that there's something going there. I don't know exactly what's going on, um, but basically the definition that she was given, the definition she was given, uh, put her under patronage, under a patron, okay, her father. I don't know if it was the story of Pluto and Capricorn because again I haven't checked when did it happen. I don't remember, um, but then it was the story of her calling for her release, calling for her sovereignty, speaking so clearly that you're like, well, this cannot be that the person who is under a patronage can speak or apotropsy can speak so sovereignly, so clearly. The tone of the voice, the tempo of the voice, showing emotions in the voice, and thinking I was like, this is not a mentally ill person. Um, and the sovereignty of that voice and that consciousness demotes the role of the need in a patron to manage this person. Okay, so and that was just a person saying, I am, I exist, I'm sovereign. and that is like, and you can also think about, um, well, with a teenager it's more difficult. That would be more like the Uranus stage, um, but definitely there is that sense of individuation. And note that Aries is a Mars ruled sign. Okay, Mars is severing ties, so individuating. It's also setting boundaries, and that's why I thought about teenagers, because they're individuating from their parents. On the Aries Capricorn level, Saturn is also the father figure. Okay, but the particular Jupiter is also father figure. But Jupiter is the father that gives you ideas, that inspires you to grow. Um, Jupiter is the one that's, for example, I can give an example from my academia. I had two professors. One of them was my instructor, and my instructor was more Jupiter ruled. He literally had, Sun ruled, Jupiter ruled Sun, okay, the Sun in Sagittarius. The other person expressed a more Saturn-like, not, I don't know his chart, but expressed a more Saturn-like demeanor. So one, the more Saturn-like, said, well, you have to understand, first of all, you must go to the United States. You cannot be like, don't do your PhD here. You must go to the United States. You must check what is going in the discourse. You must apply for, see which type of, Q1 magazines, peer-reviewed journals you need to apply to, and you need to adjust your topic for your thesis accordingly. Okay, it's given us a lot of strategy. You need to do it like that so that you will have a chance to get, was a very young professor, so that you will have the chance to come back, and then wherever, like, it would be a lot easier for you to get a job, to be, up to the competition. And then my instructor, that was more like Jupiterian, was like, no, you write about what you like, we'll find where to publish that. And then another professor that did so many things, did philosophy of science, he was an MD, studies politics and governance, sociology. And I was like, oh, you know, so which of the fathers should I listen to? And Saturn is that one's like, this is how it's done. It doesn't matter what you like, it doesn't matter how you feel about it. You want to get it done, you need to do that and that and that step. Very practical. Okay? And that type of patronage is something that even Aries with an E is at conflict with. Like, her self definition is at conflict with that structure. Like, something about the structure needs to change, or something about the structure is no longer relevant when the I am exists. For example, with Immanuel Kant, his revolutionary insight into divinity was that I am divine. I don't need a priest to, and he was a priest if I'm not mistaken, but I don't need a priest or anybody else to um, mitigate God to me, to transfer the word of God, because I am divine. I can understand if I think rationally enough, and if I retreat or think, or work at it and think rationally enough, I can identify the wisdom of the divine, because it is one intelligence. And I can reach that with logic, I can reach that with thinking. Okay, there's one truth. Um, so that, when you think about it religiously, that demotes the roles of the patriarch in delivering the word of the divine, or the message of the divine, or the connection or the teachings of the divine. Um, so so it's not about demoting when you talk about an Aries with an A perspective. It's more about, I exist, I am divine, I am like, I am all that. And so I turn to me for my teachings, for my knowledge, for my sense of sovereignty, I turn to me. Not only do I turn to me, it's not, and it's not, the sun exalts in Aries, but it's not just an ego inflated thing. It's actually um, a sort of responsibility, or actually maturing up. We also had Chiron turning direct in Aries, so it's like maturing up, or responsibility, or understand that I take on the sovereignty. I take on the decision. I go to me for teaching, because all of that, all of the world, all of the guides, all of the angels, all of the divine, all of the wisdom that I was channeled through patriarchs is actually in me. And it's even my responsibility to turn in and um, and go for and that go inside for that source of wisdom. So the thinking using the mind has a lot to do with Aries, and it's a Mars ruled sign. So we need to understand that, the type of thinking. Mars is also invasive. Aries ignites something. It's the spark of a sense of discovery. Here's something new. And now we had a new moon in Capricorn, squaring that Jupiter in Aries. Um, so for Capricorn, I spoke about Venus in Capricorn, Mercury in Capricorn. I felt like Mercury is like a delay of communication. And there's this sense, like literally before I pressed record, now that was like this frustration. It's like, I want to say something. I want to not just think. I want to also feel, because I do it also with always with like the urge, the passion, okay, to express something. And I felt a delay in communication, and I was like, oh, I need to talk about Mercury in Capricorn. I need to talk about Mercury per se, and I need to talk about Mercury in Capricorn. Because you think about another very fast moving planet, Mercury, in the sign ruled by the slowest moving planet of the traditional planets. This is why Saturn's ruling time, is the passage of time. So again, you have this, I think discrepancy is the word for it. You have this inconsistency between the velocities of these planets. And that can be very frustrating. Think about full gas and neutral. Mercury is adjusting, is moving fast, but now Mercury is called to adjust um, to taking it very slowly. And that creates frustration. That in itself creates frustration. Um, and so Saturn is. I spoke about things that stand the test of time. Okay, they usually take time to formulate. They take time to structure. They take time to materialize. Think about the book that you begin and you edit again and you edit again, and then you remove stuff and then you add them again and then you remove stuff. You say, maybe I can say it like this, maybe I can say it like that, and then kind of like the Aries instincts, like ignite, press press the red button, and then go from there. Um, where Mercury in Capricorn like delays in finding the words. The way that Saturn and Mercury can communicate is the details, attention to details. Because because Mercury rules small things, the details. It rules both Virgo and Gemini. And with Saturn, we want to take the time to pay attention to those small things. But then we have something pushing like, come on, let's do it, come on. And the passion is from the fire, okay, the fire sign. But the dedication of Capricorn is earth. It's like you need to grounded. It's like, and that creates like big frustration there. And with Mercury, it's like Mercury wants to move fast, wants to talk. Come on, switch information, switch, to conversate. Think about a dialogue. A dialogue, you need to both process what the other person thinks, and you need to listen, not to respond. You need to listen and hear them out and absorb what the other person or people say, and then come up with your reaction. But when you speak, you don't have time, to do that. But this is why conversation is so difficult, um, because it's something that flows. You respond, they respond, and the active listening is usually intuitive to a lot of people. And even when it is, then the art of speaking is more difficult. Like some people are better listeners than speakers, some people are better speakers than listeners. Um, so with with Capricorn, it's like there's a lot of detailed work to do. And right now Mercury is retrograde in Capricorn. It's about to turn retrograde. It's in its shade. Um, Slower thinker, slower thought. Like everything takes longer. The details, you need to pay attention. Um, but also there is the type of communication that is, um, from the guts, or the type of communication that is the fire of passion, like Jupiter in Aries. Jupiter in Aries, it wants, like, it's very fiery. It ignites stuff. But then, the Mercury, like the speech, it's like you have something, you're born, like you wake up, you're born with the spark in your heart, and you want to speak. It's like it's less exciting. Mercury is also, now Venus is also in Capricorn, so Mercury Venus is the arch to communicate, and then the communication is like either about practical things, or there's delays around it, or you can't talk about everything, which also happens. It's like you can reveal something, but there are details you need to leave out. Um, so, although that can be more around the Pluto, because Pluto is about the hidden, so we can also have revelations. Um, but with Saturn, you also have to be diligent. You have to abide by the rules. So communication has to abide by the rules. Abide by rules and regulation over communication, um, in this sign. And so I guess for people who has it naturally, they're like used to communicate over regulation. They can actually study law or write documents that have legal implications. Okay, this is also a time where we are, you know, when we are materializing something, then there are a lot of things to think about. Like recently, I saw a disclaimer, just one of my colleagues, about, kind of disclaimer limiting the responsibility of the astrologer to what they say. Sort of like, well, this is not, your doctor, your lawyer, your this, your that. And it's like disclaimer. And it's like, the Jupiter and Earth, like, but it's obvious. You still have to say it, you know? Or you're going for a website, you want to do a website, or you want to do, your own stuff. And, Jupiter in Aries call for a new beginning, and then Mercury in Capricorn. It's like, okay, you need, okay, you need to get a lawyer, you need to get your rights protected, you need to make your disclosures, you need to proceed with the taxes, change your definition of your business in the taxes, like all of those things that are squaring Aries, squaring the ignition. And then there is the tension of how to preserve the spark alongside materializing whatever it is that you're building um, with this new transits. Um, so so for Capricorn, I was like, I think I did everything, and then I wanted to do something about Uranus. I was thinking either Pluto, Neptune sextile, which is an interesting, intricate kind of thingy. And the way they've been working together and continue to work together. And it's more difficult one to make because, usually you search back in history. Now you kind of, um, now you're kind of uh, bound to talk about the transit when it's ongoing. And if you try to see, oh, when was the last time that this transit happens, and yes, but it's also sextile. It's not like a square or an opposition. You see that. And another harmonious aspect that I wanted to look into is when um, Uranus will trine Pluto. And I definitely think these two need to talk. um, because Pluto and Uranus, they both transform things. And this is, a Saturday, so there's Saturn dual trine. Um, and actually, for me, Saturn is in the ninth house, whole sign houses, and then I open the day with learning about some stuff to do with religion, and then travel videos, uh, which was lovely in Switzerland, by the way. Um, but the other planet that rules Aquarius is Uranus, modernly. And the way I view outer planets is with the stream of astrologers who believe that we're like fractals. And I can say the same things I can say with the outer planets using only the traditional planets, but it's kind of like, trying to computate a very long equation with in your head instead of using a calculator. It's useful. You need to be able to do that, or trying to manually operate something that you already have on auto in your camera settings. It's good. It's good for your studies. You need to be able to do that, or to calculate a chart from scratch. Okay, using ephemeris. You need to be able to do that. However, you can also use AstroSeek. You can also use a calculator, and those are the outer planets. They say what needs to be what they say what needs to be said. In like Uranus is like revolution. Saturn is the structure outside the structure. It is not a lack of hierarchy, but the decentralization of those pressure points that you had in a mountain. It's like taking the top of the mountain and then disintegrating that into, more. Um, well, this is Pluto. This is Pluto speaking. Disintegrating is a Pluto word. I see that. Although it's also Saturn making something that no longer serves a structure, a pyramid, a mountain, a structure, a hierarchy that no longer serves, and then ending my using that structure. So it's like graduating from university. Okay, it's like leaving your parents' house for some, and therefore it is anarchic. Anarchic is not the lack of hierarchy. Okay, it's the lack of one, government that controls all. So it is decentralized, but the decentralization has a desire already to go to the one. Okay, to because it talks about the masses, the people, the power of the people. Who is the peoples? Individuals, many, many, many individuals that comprise the people. So see, I'm trying to say all that with Saturn, and it's beautiful and it's lovely, and you need to be able to do that, and it brings great insights. Because if you could just say, well, it's a revolution, then you think, oh, anarchy. So you think anarchy is like, oh, no hierarchy in anarchy. No, no order in hierarchy. Oh my gosh, how wrong is this? If you try to do a revolution, you know how much order and diligence you need to actually revolutionize something. It's a lot of structure, and guess what, there's hierarchy in it. Okay. um, and within the chaotic, place on change and revolutionizing things, there is also, think about the chaotic systems. There are points of attractions, there are thresholds, there are rules. They're more flexible, they're less linear, but there are rules there. So you can look at chaos from the magic that we can't predict what will be, or you can look at chaos as we can use, I think, I'm not sure if it's the Bernoulli, like I don't remember exactly which equation, so you can um, basically take like a small, if this is a line, and you take like something small and you computate that, and then you take something small here, something small here, and take a lot of these small things, and then you try to make, a computation of where the system is going to go, and you can have interesting findings that are usable, that are applicable if you do engineering. um, so yeah, this quantum computing, I don't know how to use that in quantum computing. Probably that's being used in quantum computing, because you need to computate a system that is nonlinear and the dynamic, and well, I don't know if it is necessarily chaotic, but that is a whole philosophical thing. um, and understanding that you have also a Saturn there, you understand that you have order, especially when you want to try to apply the system. But you also must remember you have Uranus, you have disorder, you have chaos. And chaos, if you think about the more philosophical approach, think about determinism and free will. Okay, if I want to exert my free will, want to move this hand here, okay, I move this hand here. If I want to exert my free will on this hand and say move here, there must be a set of deterministic systems that allows me to execute this order that is free will. Okay? So the paradox of free will and order determinism is very much Saturn. Saturn's also the ruler of karma. Okay, the implication of your action. You accumulate something, and then something happens, unless it is disturbed. Okay? If many people who had either a Saturn maturation, Saturn square, Saturn return during the years 2020, 2021, had experienced the Saturn Uranus on and off square, okay, which is one that have been one of my points of research. And for me, I remember I traveled to Netherlands. I was in the airport. I thought I was just visiting, I was channeling, and making an experiment. Thought I was just visiting, and then I stayed the night and I bought a ticket to Amsterdam. And I returned with, and that was a journey of maturation. It was a journey of learning about my fatherland. With many things that some of them I addressed in my previous video about the freeze. Um, so there was a lot of suddenly something happens is Uranus. But what happens is a very deep maturation, okay, very intense teaching. It was, my journey there was more like, um, training for the army, but for one of the big combat units in terms of intensity. For me, like my experience, it doesn't mean that it describes that just that. So, and I talked about the Saturn Uranus thingy in another video of like the partial findings. Person that thought they were just going to look for themselves and flew to another country, like a faraway land, and then they up until that point they were working for in pubs and so on, and then from that point on, there was COVID and there were lockdowns. Okay, also when I was in the Netherlands, there were lockdowns. I did Christmas in the Netherlands with lockdowns in a shelter for the Dakbos people. So that was my Christmas. um, so the Saturn effect, this maturation, contraction, this and then that person that I interviewed, one of the people I interviewed, they just started a degree in management of something like big Saturn like maturation, and they were just looking for themselves. They thought they were on a journey, like many Israelis traveled to India or to that, so they were traveling to another country, and then that journey that was meant to be as like a self-discovery, Uranus sudden so became a big transition where they're now in another country, studying a degree, doing the maturation thing. Like they had the Saturn return back then. Um, so the connection between the two, and how sometimes you are thrown into adulthood. And this is just the nature of also Aquarius. You're thrown into adulthood, or you grow up and rebel. This particular transition, I call it the grow up and rebel, because we saw a lot of people growing up and rebelling, growing up from the belief that certain plutocracies, that certain systems are sufficient, are reliable, and they can turn to authorities. So many people were on the line. Doctors were on the line. There were the doctors who spoke up and the doctors who were silent. Um, there were, politicians and people of the bureaucracy that had to enforce certain things, and many people realized that there is a gap between the situation that we are in and the way that we are being regulated. There is a boundary here that we need to set as sovereign people. Okay, so that was all. You can think about it in terms of Pluto in Capricorn and Aries in Aries. And within that fractal, we have, if you go to the Aquarius, then you say, well, there's Saturn, there's something activating Aquarius per se, and that when Saturn entered, we had the social distancing, basically the stay home, and the result of that, because a lot of the result of that was also people doing homesteading, was people starting hydroponic growing of fruits and vegetables, was people starting businesses or attending to their businesses, was people going, meeting everybody on Zoom. Okay, so the Great Resignation. So a lot of people grew up and rebelled, grew up into their sovereignty, grew up into self-sustainability, and said, "Oh, okay, no, hey, that is not for me. This is not for me." Um, and I think I'm quite expecting the Uranus Pluto discourse because we've had a Pluto Uranus square. Um, Many upheavals happened back then. I think that was squaring from Aries, if I'm not mistaken, or still in Pisces. Probably still in Pisces. And then Uranus entered Aries or in Aries. I don't remember. I don't have a chart in front of me. I'm not the human ephemeris though. I'm thinking about Patrick Watson with the thing for Halloween. So with within or as a result of the Pluto Uranus square, we also had the Arab Spring, which I thought was fascinating. And the only king that survived was the king of Morocco. And what Morocco had special about them is the solar fields that they made. They were like um, I think one of the first in the region to build these huge solar fields, and the king made adjustments for the people, and that was the only kingdom that survived. And I must do a video about Morocco. Just need to learn about it deeper. Um, so that was like the only king that survived. Then that survives, and I'm speaking about also the legitimacy of the people. So, very interesting thing that happened. I think it was already following the Uranus Pluto square. Um, and now we're heading towards the trine. So I think Uranus is moving faster than Pluto. So they met in a conjunction. Um, I'm trying to think when was the last conjunction that they had. I think, if I'm not mistaken, it was even I had probably either in Sagittarius. Yeah, I think probably it was either in Sagittarius. Yeah, I'm not mistaken. I don't know. Then Uranus conjuncted Neptune. I think it was Uranus conjuncted Neptune in. Well, I don't remember where. I need to see that. And now we have Uranus moving towards a trine with Pluto. Um, and Pluto will be in Aquarius when that happens. So it's a very interesting conversation. Um, Pluto transforms something from the core, but in a different way that Uranus does that. Uranus is like the tower card in the sense of like there is an earthquake and the big towers, poof, they fall down. Um, Pluto is more like, the atomic explosion of something. There's nuclear energy, it can be used to destroy worlds, but it can also use to power, you know, cities. Um, and I guess a lot of that will probably see nuclear energy being used in technology, also in the light fashion of it, and not just oh there are nuclear bombs. We'll probably see nuclear energy also as powering aviation, probably aviation or spaceships, or at least the sparks of technology that can do such a thing, even if it will only be used centuries later. It can also be invented or even put into practice, like to have the module, to have the pilot during that time. Um, and especially and we'll probably see other uses of nuclear energy. So It's like, hey, nuclear energy can also be a good thing. Um, I talked about gravity and gravitational waves when I discussed Pluto and Aquarius, one of my Pluto and Aquarius videos. I think, yeah, I think also the recent one. Yeah, the recent one. Oh, you need to watch the recent one. There are like a lot of interesting things compressed together. And and another thing for more human relations on the zeitgeist, social level type of relationships that people have. Um, Pluto is a lot about attachment, deep attachment, and bonding, and the melting of the core of something and merging it into another. Uranus it's also about disintegrating, yes, but Uranus is about um, an excitatory state that creates uh, an alter wavelength, brave wavelength state. So the waves change, like alpha, delta, so and so. I'm sure like other waves that we're not aware of. Um, and then we have the eureka, this like those insights, that change happening, the sudden change of something. You've been trying to change something for years, or people, let's say they've been trying to quit smoking for years, then they have a Uranus transit, they take one less shot, or like one less shot, turned down like the cigarette, and then for the rest of their lives they're done with it. You're just done with it. The people that one day put something down, they tried, just one day they put something down and they never touched it until the day they died. That can be like a Uranus thing. Because it's like suddenly something changes. And I talked about like the brain waves of things. Um, and and therefore Uranus is also a sudden union and sudden divorce. And I'm talking about terms of relation. I'm sure if we look into chemistry, we'll probably find also stuff that has to do with that. I think about elasticity and plasticity, because plasticity, think about, you cannot unboil an egg. Um, So this is also a change in relation, a sudden change in relation. You cross a certain threshold. Again, the Saturn thingy. Saturn is always inlaid within the Uranus when we talk about rulership. Um, because rebelling and taking your sovereignty, Aries, requires you to mature. Um, but it also gives you a reason to do this, a reason to mature. It's like, oh, there's this spark in my life. I'm willing to take on that, responsibility. I'm willing to take on that journey um, to mature, because I want to live this passion that I have. Just want to make sure that in my maturing, I live this passion, not lose this passion, live this passion. This is the square, kind of like, I'm willing to take on this, you know, structure to mature up. But in taking on this structure, I want to live this passion that I have and prolong it and sustain it. Or with Uranus, okay, I'm rebelling the existence of things. I invent something new. Okay, I want to make it usable. Okay, I'm willing to do that. I'm willing to take on this responsibility to make it usable, to do it over, to try this, to adjust this, to adjust, to refine this, to refine that. Must sustain the essence of why I made it. Okay, if I build this aviation tool, then they tell me, well, they're gonna use it for war. And I'm like, Okay, sometimes you need to use stuff like that for war, but mainly this is designed for people, for individuals to be able to fly an airplane simply enough so that they can have accessibility to, or a spaceship or something like that. It's like I must ensure that that happens when I, you know, materialize this. Um, so for the Uranus Pluto, it's not just about the technology; it's also a harmonious meeting of the desire to break free and the desire to bond with. So I guess a lot of people that have this, conflict between being Plutonian and being Uranian might find a place where they can meet these two desires in a harmonious aspect. Where do these two meet? And how do these two meet? Because Pluto is intense attachment and Uranus is not nihilism, although with Aquarius, yes, nihilism is a part of the process. Um, but Uranus is an excitatory state that is not really sustained for long. When you think about it, it came here to to change something, to remove everything that no longer serves, so that you can build anew. And to both Pluto and Uranus make, like, they came here to make you more authentic. Um, and they're both outer planets. They're a lot of part of humanity becoming more authentic. Um, and they both also they have a crisis revolving them. Okay, changing. Let's say even if, let's say you were a commoner, and then you were a commoner, and now it is possible to travel to space. So you were like, I don't know, should I buy a car? Should I, do a driving? Like, oh, you know what? I'll have a spaceship license. It's easier. It's simple. Now they have, new models for it. I will try to do that. You just by going to space, your physical body needs to adjust. There are certain things that we are used to or adopted or accustomed to Earth, and on other planets they work differently. Gravity works differently on other planets, and so even the gravitational pull that we have on our internal organs works differently. Okay, Pluto is also excretion. So excretion, you need help to excrete even sometimes. Um, like a vacuum or toilet or something in spaceships, because we need to get accustomed to that. And Uranus can come and say, well, we have this technology, we have that technology. Of course, we can do that. It's no problem. Like, we just adjust a couple of things, and then we're able to do that in space as well. Um, Uranus is also astrology. And, one of my videos, I don't remember which. I think it was Pluto and Aquarius, and I talked about astrology. So one of the things that came to my mind is, say, well, on Earth we look at the moon, and what is the moon aspecting? Because it brings things closer. So we're on another planet. We're like, okay, what's the closer planet? It's like, does this planet have? It can have several moons. And I think about machine learning. If you have, one moon, it's like linear regression. But machine learning is more like, you have a couple of moons. So which is the closest moon, and then you computate the the thing, and then you have more parameters to computate. Okay, so it's like you can adjust astrology to, it's like there's simple rules to do that, but then the adjustment takes, more rigorous technology to perform. Um, mm, 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 mm. And and that meeting between transforming something from the core and changing, uplifting, evolving, uh, suddenly take a tremendous change. So with Uranus, you can feel like, oh, the weight has been lifted off. Uh, but it can also be like, okay, the gap between where I am, it's like a bit of a quantum leap. Although I think quantum leap can also be, me sitting here and then me sitting here, because statistically, like that, for some systems that might be possible. But this is also a quantum leap. You think about quantum leap, it's like you go to another galaxy, but quantum leap can also be, just okay, this was here and now this is here. um, and but it can kind of be like, before enlightenment chopwood, after enlightenment chopwood. But it can also be, um, if you think about the tunnels. I think is that the vortices thingy? The you have something, you have like a tunnel, because I have like, this relativity theory, there's quantum thing, and I'm, and Mercury is in Capricorn in the shade period. It's in the shade, and I don't have anything in front of me, so I can make like a ton of mistakes right now. So um, when you think about being, transferred through a tunnel, like a gravitational tunnel that you go, you're being vacuumed into, not necessarily a black hole. That's too simplistic of an explanation. Uh, but you can get like tunnel through time and then go, end up in, another galaxy, for example. I think Einstein spoke about these tunnels, like time tunnels. I don't know what you call them. So I guess when people say quantum leaps, they think about like these tunnels in time you pass through. It's something that would have taken a lot of time, and then it's like, whoop, just like whoop, quantum leap. You're here now, done. And that actually works, and it can be experienced as an instantaneous miracle, even, or a miracle that happens over a short time. Um, and so there can be like a sudden solution to a deep Plutonian issue, which we've been dealing with. So, that can be very, very interesting. I think about open source, because one of the things I think people are so worried about, and for a reason, is that surveillance is going to be a lot easier. In the, in, like the possibility of uh, anybody to keep private is going to be poof, and people would, desire to keep certain things private. Um, but privatization, in general, privatization, when we talk about Pluto in Aquarius, privatizations, it's like it's the power to the people. But when you talk about private property, I'm like, it's not like the Neptune Saturn, but it is kind of, you can have private property, but like you can't have, you can't be too affluent when the people are below you. And so that can take on a demoting aspect, okay, demoting those who are too affluent on the account of those who are not, especially if they are kings and you pay taxes to them, right? But it can also um, be the understanding that the people need to be affluent. All the people need to be affluent. Okay, wealth, Pluto, wealth has to travel um, and reach a lot of destination at the same time. So it's very difficult to keep private. And again, if you want to make sure that you reach all the marginalized societies and communities, you need to A, travel in the speed of light, sort of, or in the speed of air, the wind. You need to be like the wind, and spread the news. But the flip side of it is that even surveillance cannot be private. It's like, oh, there are going to be this surveillance technology, that surveillance technology. It's like, okay, but think about open source. What is the safest method for you to protect your privacy online? Is to go to open source programs, to browse through open source programs and open source browsers and use open source programs. Why? Because even though it's open source, everybody can be exposed to that. Many people, it's the power of the people to tend to um, the bugs, the possible bugs that you can have, and the possible breaches of that security. And so when you want to secure something, you put it in the air. And if I think about when I was in Netherlands and I was in between houses, there was like, what will I do? What will do? Anytime anything can be stolen. So I said, well, I'm going to put my identification cards on social media, all my social media, so I can have a proof of my identity. Okay, and it was biometric passport, so to have a proof of my identity is to have some picture that shows this passport with me. Okay, and if I have it on my social media and all of my social medias, then it's no problem. Okay, I can show that I exist, I can show that I am, because the probability of me to show that I am having diverse social medias with my details, yeah, counterintuitively saves me, because if somebody steals that or steals this or steals that, I was like, no, look, I have, let's say, I don't know, 10 social medias, and then, look, I have 10, like all of these social medias or whatever is left, all of these social medias. Look, it's the same picture of me uploading my passport, so you can have multiple proofs, and you can have like statistically significant data that shows that I am me. Okay, this is the thought of Aquarius. This is the thought that you must keep your passport. You must keep your. Okay, things can happen. So you don't have the document. You want to make sure that you have something that shows that you have a copy of the document. Like, this is what you need to have. And if you keep it private, let's say somebody steal, it's very likely if you are in between houses, somebody can steal your passport and your phone. But if I tell them, okay, go on Facebook, go to this and that profile, go on Instagram, go to this and that profile. It's visible to all. Then yes, it's visible also to the people that they don't need my passport to take my like. Really, but I've been in between houses for like 6 months, and I had a biometric passport, and nobody asked me for my fingerprints, even before I got the passport. Okay, because there was time I was separated from the passport, and I only had a picture. Okay, nobody asked for my fingerprints, and I have a biometric passport. One of the most demanded biometric passports. Okay, in Europe. So not for my name, for the name of the country. So this is the type of thinking that we have regarding how we think about security, or how we think about we are safe. When something is in the air, then the more copies you have of that, then it is more safe. And that is a counterintuitive to how we've been raised to think about security, or even how we've been raised to think about Pluto. Pluto is secrets, hiding, secrets. Like, you want to hide something, you know what? Put it on every social media, open. Nobody's going to watch. Like, nobody cares. You need to promote yourself. Like, if you do something, you need to promote it so much that you're not going to have, like, something, unless you're very, very, lucky or unlucky. Depends on, on what it is that you're exposing. Like, going viral, no, like, your social media is the safest place to do so, because whomever you are thinking that you are afraid of, if your details if you are out, then they are out. Who is sought for is the people who keep themselves private. Then it's like, oh, why are they sought for? Because they can be exclusive. Even when you try to take advantage of an identity, the matter of the identity still matters. If you see, okay, there's so many things showing that this person, it is so exposed that this is this person, and they can like that they will immediately show up. It's very difficult to put it on another person when everybody knows. So both the government cannot say we didn't know. It's like, okay, look at this 30 social medias to show this is this person. You can't say I didn't know. It's the same person, the same social media, they uploaded it. You can't say I didn't know. They're out there. Okay, so the government cannot say, oh, we didn't know about it. Okay, but also the people who are not the government. Okay, they cannot say we didn't know about it. If you see 30, 30 passports with, let's say, John Doe's face on them, and then you see one passport with Xin Changchu name on it, you're like, okay, that Xin Changchu with that passport that we've seen many times, like the other person's name on it, it's like that doesn't compile, and that's how open source works. Okay, you have many people coming, many people working, many people, bulletproofing an algorithm or bulletproofing a code. And so this is statistically safer than going for, your Windows, or going for your Google, or going for I don't know what, you know. So Pluto is about privacy, is about hidden, is about secrets, is about security as well, trying to keep something secure. The strategy, when you talk about the age of air, is open source, decentralized. So easy as it is to exploit systems, it's going to be the power of the people that we will need to be reliant on to deproof those um, invaders or people who try to exploit the system. So, and of course, Uranus is technology. So one fear is like, oh, you could hack into an airplane, you could hack into a spaceship, you could hack into hubs and shoot Garfield videos from live on NASA. You could do those things, but then it will be up to the people to create something that's safer, and they'll probably go to open source um, type of um, securing their data. Even with quantum computing, it will probably not be so easy to penetrate air. Like you can't penetrate air. Okay? Um, also, of course, we're going to have uh, we're well, the good thing about it, and I think that the Mars in Gemini is very much a preparatory place because Mars in Gemini, we had Rahu in Gemini for 2-3 years. I think 2 years was it, and then we have Mars in Gemini for so long. So it's both preparing us for the Uranus in Gemini, and we also begin to develop discernment and to understand information a bit more um, sovereignly, or we, like, all of us need to get a bit wiser about information and discerning information and paying attention to information, um, and just being aware also, the medium and the media and so on and so forth. So when we are being presented with mass consciousness, or these are UFOs, or this is the news. What idea do we have of the news? um, so there will be a deeper evolution as to discerning information. Probably the role of psychology in science, because Pluto is about the deeply psychological processes, and so the way they affect our thinking, the clarity of mind, um, our ideologies. Okay, Aquarius is also ideologies. I guess people say the word humanitarian in relation to Aquarius, and I guess ideological, okay, or ideas affecting humanity is a more correct term than humanitarian, because we think of humanitarian as something that supports humanity. But great ideologies concerning humanity, I guess, is a more correct term for that. Um, yeah. So this is a messy vlog, and I can go back to the ruler of whatever's happening in Capricorn, Saturn, being in Aquarius. So we're probably going to have it can be either people appealing to the certain authorities of people who are considered to be intellectual, or alternatively, hopefully, people realizing that, for example, if we talk, for me, it's the 12th house, so it's like medicine, like the 12th 6. So if you could turn to medicine, it's like you know more about you and what you're dealing with than your doctor can ever know, because you specify in you. If you take the responsibility and you study what you're dealing with, then you will be as you know spets yeah, specified in you. Say, I'm dealing with so and so. Okay, if you research that, if you look into that, then and you apply that to you, and you see what applies to me, then you know more about you than your doctor ever will. Yeah, when I studied to be a holistic health practitioner, we were told nobody knows about your patient more than your patient. We know about systems, we know about the correlations that we have between systems, with bodies, energy body, this body, that body. We know about things that statistically, statistically, if you have something with your eyes, I'm going to look at your sun, I'm going to look at your moon. Um, Maybe parents, the way you see the world, right? Because the right eye, the left eye, something that was affected by the mother line, some mother bloodline, something was affected by the father bloodline, and so on and so forth. But how it applies to you, nobody can tell me. But only you, only you. It doesn't matter for how long I studied the cosmos and people and bodies. I can give you new insights. I can give you new ideas, I can give you new interpretation, but what of those interpretation applies to you, only you can tell. And when we're going to have this, with Saturn in Aquarius, we've already began to have this. People saw great discrepancies between what the doctor says and what they know about their bodies, and they're like, no, this cannot be that I do not know this. This cannot be that this is a bias anymore. Don't gaslight me with your scientific logic that does not apply to my body or my mind or my situation or whatnot. Don't gaslight me with that. There is a way to use biases and being aware of biases and logical thinking in favor of reaching closer and closer to truth, or degrees of validation and degrees of being certain in your belief. belief. We have beliefs in science. We don't have scientific truths. If you think we have scientific truths, you are not doing science. You are doing something out there in your mind. Okay? And Saturn already began to, to accord for that. It's like, hey, no, you don't in the name of science me, just the way you don't in the name of God me. Don't in the name of science me. Don't tell me what science is. Don't tell me about, if you want to point or target a specific observation or target a certain bias that you think I may have. Okay, look at how do I know? How do I think? Okay, look. But that has to apply to me. I don't care what an EBM research, randomized controlled EBM research says about one parameter. There's a whole body here. Okay, so Saturn already began, and for some people it was in regime. Okay, if you say that this is in my favor, in my security, okay, then how come that and that and that is not happening in my security? If I want to walk out of domestic violence, man or woman or child, okay, how come I don't have a place to go to that is safe for me in a way that I define as safe? But I have to wear a mask, even if I go to the forest, or else if the cop will find me in the forest, they will give me, a fine. Okay, doesn't mean that you shouldn't put masks on. It's just like, oh, people are beginning to think. Oh, wait, 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 wait. You say this is in my favor. Why do we control everyone for masks, but we still don't fund the certain types of cancer um, research that yielded medications that induce regression, complete regression, or near complete regression in terminally ill cancer patients? Did you know that we have at least a couple of medications like that that were developed and the research funding stopped and people died? How do I know? I spoke with the doctor. It was a part of my thesis. It was a part of my thesis to know what doctors don't talk about because they either can't for some reasons or, this is why non-dual reality back then was like, oh, can we talk about this? Um, so people begin to question. And Pluto is just going to intensify this. It will be so obvious in whatever it is that the people that we turn to for knowledge is like, doctor, what is going on with my child? What's going on with my baby? You know. Oh, you must give that and that pill. You must give, otherwise, if they stop taking that pill, they're gonna have, a terrible thing happening to them. They will, they will come back. They will be in risk of life. This is so so terrible. This thing that's happening to them. It's like they take psychedelics and they don't. Like, but they don't. It's like, oh, but wait, they had like a traumatic event. Oh, no, no, this probably they imagined that. It is no, no, no. Don't believe everything. Don't believe everything. Oh, but psychedelics heal those experiences in people who experience such experiences my child says they had. Oh, we can do that. We can do that, but only with, so and so conditions and then you find that the doctor, molests children or something like that. So that is the type of stuff that are going to unravel. The things that we were looking up to and say, well, it's difficult. You must study so many years to understand that. Can be Pluto is also reduction and simplification. Okay, it's getting to the essence of something. It's like, oh wait, but there are actually guidelines that I can use to know that I'm okay. There are things that I can do, just me, that keep me okay. Or, for example, say it can be around technology. Say, it's so difficult to build an airplane. It's so difficult to build a spaceship. And then, they'll say, well, there are actually things that you can buy today and you can comprise them together and you can have, a proof, proof that, have a procedure that proves that. And it's like, you can build your car. You can build your car. You can build a solar car. You can build a solar spaceship. And of course, you can do that. You buy solar panels here, okay, and you may have, need access or build access to a place that tests that the car is safe enough to drive in. You can do it. You can have like an open source program for whatever, GPS or security that you need for your car, or open source AI to drive your car, drive your plane, because then everybody can drive a plane. This is also a part of the Aquarius thing. Now, because there is no Neptune involved in that, it's also true. Okay? Neptune is a place where you can be delusional, or alternatively, you can have a very deeply healing experiences in touch with other worlds. So, for example, NDEs, okay, near-death experiences, or non-dual experiences. It can also be, for example, like psychedelic experiences. But Pluto and Uranus are not unreal. And so, because, in 2026, there's going to be a triangle of Pluto, Neptune, and Uranus. Okay? It's an interesting one. And that can give, because it's a sextile, then, well, it leads me to the Pluto sextile Neptune, because Neptune in general generates confusion. But when it is, how does it work? Okay, if it is in trine, in sextile, it either means that this sense of confusion has a role that saves you and protects you, or like dissociation, for example, or dreaming, a lot of, excessive dreaming, daydreaming, or alternatively, Neptune or even in harmonious aspects, Neptune can be a spiritual or artistic imagery or poetry. Neptune in harder aspect can be something unreal. It can be the type of dissociation where it's no longer serving you, and therefore can also be addiction. Okay? Escapism that is no longer serving you. So with Pluto sextile Neptune, we have, yes, I'm talking about Pluto sextile Neptune. So with Pluto sextile Neptune, we have a nuclei change, okay, that is allowed due to the, how should I say it, eunastasia-like effect of Neptune. Like you can access certain things, certain taboos, certain cores or essences of something, and you're able to go through these changes thanks to the dream world, the artistic world, the perhaps musical, lyrical, poetical world, the spiritual magnitude of even what you're dealing with. So when these two work in harmony, we have Neptune allowing for Pluto to work. Now, of course, this can also be well, this can also be certain unhidden facets of Plutonian transformation, or things that are missing, or things that are there is a meaning to something that is missing, for example, or the power of that which is missing. That can also be that. Um, and what Neptune, it's difficult to tell. Neptune is also longing for that which, for the ideal, and Pluto is unraveling the real. So there is, when they two join together, you can unravel the reality of that which is ideal. Neptune is also on the mythical, that which is the mythical. For example, I'm not surprised that we have a rise in pantheism and pantheistic people, both with social media and people being able to talk about this. Um, but there is also the ability to talk about the taboo topics relating to mythical figures. When we talk about, think about, Neptune, we talk about the power of Neptune, or the power of the sea, or the power of the ocean. Think about the Romantic era. I don't know the astrology of the Romantic era. This is interesting. I think Pluto was between Capricorn to Aquarius. Like, no, I don't remember I don't remember when was the Romantic era. So I would need to look for that. But in the Romantic era, people began to take interest in the ocean. Now, if you're like me and you're living in the around the Mediterranean Sea, please, this is not an ocean. Okay, go to Northern Europe, go to Netherlands. For me, the first time I've seen like an ocean was when I was in Netherlands. We were traveling to Enkhuizen, and I saw what the romantics were talking about. Because if you think about the shores of Greece and those crystal clear waters and nice, even the jellyfish look inviting there. Like, this is not the romantic era. No, 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 no. You need to think about the gray giant with foamy white, like, gush that takes over and can flood the city. That was what people were drawn to during the Romantic era, and they began to enjoy being in the shores next to the oceans. Okay, Europe, the ocean. Okay, that gray was suddenly being a mythical, suddenly being interesting, and that coincided with the depth of emotions that you could only express in art. Or art is sublimation. Okay, art is sublimation. This is so Pluto Neptune. I like, this is prediction here. I will have to do a spirit of matter video about the Romantic era, and about sublimation. Um, so it's being able to see the reality of something and still I find it ideal, or idealize that which is real. A very interesting experience. Another thing can be, because Pluto is also to know the core of something, you can have the experience of knowing the core of something, or the illusion of knowing the core of something. But because it's a harmonious aspect, I get it as the experience of knowing the core of something. Neptune is also lack of boundaries. So, lack of boundaries between people, or between people and subject, feeling the energy of a chair. I mean, come on. Um, and that sextile is going to kind of match into the Uranus trine in Pluto and sextile in Neptune. It's a very magical triangle that creates a lot of ideals that are achievable because of the harmonious aspects. You can tap into them, you can achieve them. Um, and that's going to happen with Neptune still in Pisces, Pluto in Aquarius, and Uranus in Gemini. So from the end of Taurus to Gemini. So we're going to be like air and water. And and that is, you think about science, then you think about what can you do with air and water. You think about steam, like the steam engine, um, or the power of air and water. Think about the meals, just like the meals that we have like in Netherlands. We have them not only for air, you also have them for water, like the water meals, and you'll create energy with water and with air. Um, mm, 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 mm. So probably stuff like these inventions are going to be. Um, yeah, I like to make predictions. It's my favorite part, and also my favorite part is to make predictions. Not just sometimes I look at the chart or like I looked at Germany, and then I saw like stuff, and I'm like, oh damn, why did I look at that? Um, but sometimes to make predictions is also about the beautiful things that we're going to see or the beautiful potentials that there are in a certain period. Um, there's an inventive part of making predictions because I have tools. It's like a bit of engineering. You have tools like this is what Neptune can do, this is what Pluto can do, this is what Uranus can do. Now combine them together and like what can we get with with those things together? Of course, Pluto and Uranus are going to be in the signs of the masses, the people, and the signs of society. And the people and society is not the same thing. What's the difference between the people and society? There are peoples, but there's society, and people is like a larger group of people than society. um, think Gemini is the dual aspect of society. So Gemini, we talk about wars. Gemini is a civil war, and Pluto in Aquarius was the French Revolution. Um, so that is in terms of humanity sozusagen. Air and water. I guess also flying bodies of water because water is with Saturn is in Pisces. There is this danger of water scarcity. Um, scary, but when we think about water, we think a lot of our water can extract water in the clouds. We might have flying bodies of water, people living in the air. We already have like a designed air hotel where you can stay for 9 months. I think it already had a pilot. If I'm not mistaken, there was even a wedding there. Um, and they also have agriculture on the plane. Of course, we have agriculture in space, but uh, or attempt. I don't know like how the project's going, but You think about flying bodies of water or delivering water by plane and by spacecraft. Can be like how can we live on Mars if we don't create water there? And you can also create water. This is about weather engineering, and weather engineering we see it in this, you know. I like to look at the sky. So for those of you who watch also my other channels, I like to look at the sky and the structure of the sky. And my joke is that when the clouds look like a Rembrandt painting, then you know that we're being sprayed. And that is one facet of climate engineering. And I know that this word is so, like, there's so much baggage around climate engineering because this is usually the people cannot see the clarity of the sky and having weird percentages of humidity and so on and so forth. That being said, um, climate engineering is a part of how we might think to get water in the future. Because you have to create clouds and so on and so forth. Uh, of course, you can say, well, a lot of these difficulties are man-made and so on and so forth. Yes, what is man-made, what is cosmic, what is, I don't know. But one way to deal with that is probably going to resort to excreting water from the clouds. Um, so yeah, I can see a lot of dark and light aspects to that. But with Neptune, we might also understand the spiritual connection to technology and the spiritual connection of things, the unity of things. For example, a healthy soil, the soils that many, divergent ecosystems grow on, is something that we need to have clear water, and it also balances the climate. So we know how to create climate naturally. We understand also beginning to understand the connection between psychology and climate. Okay, there are some places where people are affected by the climate, and we have like seasonal affective. What I don't like the names, but this is also the root of understanding that we are affected by the climate, but also we affect the climate, even if by deforestation processes where we I don't know, cut certain trees or cut too much trees, or burn too many forests, and not all these forests are pines. Pines, when you burn them, they basically multiply. This is how they inseminate the land. They only fertilize when they're burned. Um, so they learn to cope with fire. Okay, and nature also has this adaptability. We're talking about ruining a planet, and one type of environmentalism that is being aware of the damages that we create to our planet. Another type of environmentalism is being aware of the regenerative power of our ecosystems. Even the fact that many people are aware and desire to do something in itself is the regenerative powers of nature. Um, so, with the Neptune thing, it's always understanding the beyond the reality that we see. Um, the connection between climate and wars. Of course, like the essence of many wars is clear water, fertile soil, routes of transportation that has to do with clear water, fertile soil, and clear air, air that you can easily fly through. Um, and of course, that is going to be extended to our surroundings, our cosmic surroundings. Um, yeah. This is a good time to make predictions. Um, mm, 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 mm. mm. Well, with Neptune, we cannot ignore the missing effect. And, and if you think about what is the fortunate aspect of missing, think about something that you want to do and you think is good, but there's a missing piece to that. There's a missing piece, and that piece which is missing either allows the thing to function, okay? The missing information allows something to function. For example, in stories, any story that you find about a detective story, okay, spies or something like that, what makes you read the story is the knowledge that is missing. If you're very Neptunian, you might find it difficult to read that because you will find what's missing very right early on. But even that, you can enjoy how things process through to get to that. It's like there's some information is missing, and there's a mystery around things. The sense of mystery, or you feel, for example, when you communicate with deities, what's the joy about it? I want to see if I have, yeah. The joy about communicating with deities, with spirits, is like you sense something happening, but the person that makes it happen is missing. They are here, and the and not here at the same time. You sense the present, but the missing thing creates like a mystery. And so you get a sense of connection that is allowed by that which is missing. And that is another way that the missing piece can function in a good way. Another way can be technical. Let's say you have an invention, okay, you're trying to apply it, you build a model, and everything works out, but there's a missing piece, and you think this project is good, but then it doesn't come into fruition. With the trying, I think it will. With the sextile and so, I think it might, but this is also a possibility that some technological change will not come into fruition, and then you understand the motives of, let's say, the people you were working for, or the motives that people were trying to take that to, and you are like, no, humanity was not ready for that invention to come out. For example, right now, when I discovered chaos theory, or read deeper about chaos theory, I realized that one of the applications was the thing that manages the heartbeat. Okay, this little chip that manages the heartbeat, that works on interfering within the intervals, so to make the intervals of the heartbeat having like good intervals, steady intervals, so steady pulse. And this is using knowledge from chaotic systems. So basically, using computation and trying to compute a chaotic system successfully to manage the heartbeat of a person to save a life. And I thought, well, this probably is going to be used in the brain too. And lo and behold, a couple of years later, it is. But unfortunately, I'm also, by now I understand that I'm recovering from CPTSD. So I have the knowledge because around people who recover from that. So I have the knowledge of people who try that. Um, After a long, process here, they have to take so many medications and see that they don't work, and then they try that. And unfortunately, there were also cases where people came from like back and forth into hospitals because that was not operating for them so good. So it sounded like, oh, well, of course, the brain is a lot more complex a system, but it's like it can be done. Um, and yeah, that there's that merge of technology that currently is not showing the results that we want it to show, but unfortunately, it's marketed as something that is showing the results we want it to show. And this is also a big problem. Um, but with the NEP missing, that can be okay, something is needed for the technology to work, and so it is not marketed, it is not being put to use, it is not being implemented. And then you realize that that missing piece had a greater fortune to it. Okay, on a personal Neptune journey that I had, well, Neptune is in Capricorn, it's ruled by Saturn. My Saturn is in the ninth house. So I began to study at age 20, which is early considering to Israel, because in Israel, our army service is mandatory. So it was very early. And I did not have the money to finish. And I studied filmmaking and English literature and linguistics. So I did not have the money to continue on studying. And I was so frustrated. I was so frustrated. But then I began to work in the industry. Okay. I began to volunteer on sets in beginning student productions. And then I began to do screenwriting. And I began to write more consistently. I began to have achievements. The first movie that I wrote with someone, short film, won eventually the first place in LA Film Festival, and I designed also the writing on the publication that we sent out. Okay, I did not become a millionaire. I did not see a penny from that, but I did have. Unfortunately, I was too young, and I called myself Sister Spooky. But you know, you also have to understand, like hey, so that happened when I was very young. um, so that was very exciting. So I did not have the money to continue studying, but I was actually doing filmmaking until I had a personal crisis, and I was like, okay, I was supposed to write a feature film, and I was like, well, I feel like I need to leave because I've been doing so much writing that I didn't live life, and so to advance my writing, I need to leave. So I took a break. Um, Years later, I actually had time to get myself a degree, and I said, well, I want to study, and that was possible. So I did politics and governance and English linguistics. I wanted to maintain my English, and then I wanted to keep learning about other countries, not just and because I like to travel. And then I said, oh well, politics and governments, maybe international relations, but I had maybe one or two courses of international relations, but the whole degree was very interesting. Um, and then I went directly to the second degree, and then I was in my, um, a tier of three courses. And one course I was a Me Too case before the Me Too. Okay, that was after my Saturn return. Okay, so I was already well into my 32 when I experienced that. Imagine that before Saturn return. Imagine that before the knowledge that it was still very difficult. I don't wish that to anybody. Um, but that missing, okay, that money that I didn't have to study in the beginning to finish the degree, um, the missing part basically saved me from going into these experiences because I was studying filmmaking, okay? Filmmaking. I know some people who taught me filmmaking, whom I would sit in their courses voluntarily because I knew that they were big names in the industry, and I would sit in their courses voluntarily. And fortunately for me, nothing happened to me there, but they are perpetrators. I cannot say names, but I know for sure people that I saw in my eyes sitting like this, a couple of meters in front of, seeing your movie, asking, "What was the movie about?" And everybody being afraid of like, how will they respond because their name was so big in the industry. I know creators, the colleagues of mine that were working with some actors that are now the known sexual perpetrators, serial sexual perpetrators. Okay, I was 20. That I go. I was so fortunate, you know. I was so fortunate, um, and that is another story of how that which is missing becomes meaningful, becomes salvation. Um, I also did not serve the army, and that was fortunate. Back then, I was like, well, I don't have the fitness that I need to sustain army service, and I like sports and so, but I didn't have the fitness that I need. And I was like, I don't want to do something that's not, meaningful. And there are other things that I will not talk about in here. But I was like, okay, I did not do army service, and it's mandatory in Israel. And I thought, oh, I will never get a job. I got my first job was like in a credit card company that was part of a bank, like the biggest bank in Israel. Like I didn't get any job, and then I got that job. Like, I mean, first job after graduating high school. So it was like, oh, okay, like I can still be alive. And now thinking back, I know what happens to a lot of people in the army, regarding Me Too topics. Unfortunately, this happens. It also like there are always divergent stories. I have a friend, a colleague, that she served in one of the intelligence units, and then she went through sexual like rape outside the army, and the army funded her therapy. Okay, so it's not all dark, but there are also stories what happens within the army, and then unfortunately, it's not easy. I think one of my closest friends at the university time was trying to do security job, and they had something that they went through in the army, and they like that person. She, not the perpetrator. She was a daughter to a family that was had people in politics, had people uh, really like they had connections, and she was told, "Do not talk, don't say anything, because you won't get a job. If you talk, you won't get a job." Okay? So those things were, and eventually, like only years after, you see the meaning of that, and that's like in the hand of God. It's in the hand of God that so and so happened or didn't happen. Um, or now it's in therapy when the person that recommended to me, my therapist, she didn't. She had also CPTSD, very intense CPTSD, and she had dissociation. When I literally told her stuff, and she was either not able to read or didn't quite get, and then she got something, and then she forgot about it, and then she was hurt by her therapist, and then she wanted to go to my therapist who refused her. And I couldn't, like, I saw that there was nobody to talk with, and he was already being violent to me because she spoke with him. So it was like she wanted to go to see that therapist who hurt me. Then I told her that like there's something wrong there. Um, After she got hurt from another therapist, he refused her and was like, she was safe. She was sorry that she couldn't go to him because she liked him so much and so much. She appreciated. I heard such good things about him. And then she was treated in open dialogue approach. Now she's out of a lot of the stuff. Okay, Karen return. Um, but those are the stories of the divine missing. You think something is missing, something is not happening with Neptune. Something is missing, something falls through. A grief, a loss, but this loss, you're, and this is also the experience with Neptune. So with Pluto Neptune, there's some missing, either missing information, some piece of the puzzle is missing, and that piece of the puzzle uh, that is missing can actually be empowering or protective. or care for your safety, um, and you don't know. Okay, Neptune is a lot to do with espionage. It's a lot to do with channeling. For me, when I was in between houses, then of course I was channeling, so it was the hidden that I get like intuited where to go, what to do, what to say, and so on and so forth. So that's another like Neptune Pluto. So the hidden power or the power of mystery. And then there is spiritual power, exposing gurus, spiritual gurus, exposing, Osho like figures who actually raped I don't know how many people, exposing these truths, getting at the core reality of something. Also, psychedelics to heal trauma, because Pluto also deals with trauma, a warlike trauma, and abuse is warlike in many cases. So, abuse of power. mm. So, Neptune is the dissociation that protects your consciousness from dealing with the trauma when you're not ready to. Um, Neptune is the artistic, the ideal feeling that you can rely on when you're, I think about NDEs and some people that are shown or experiencing life in NDEs, but they receive the power to experience things from the eyes of the other people around them and from their point of view, and to reassess life and to see things in the eyes of love and so on and so forth. Um, so that divine energy, divine ideal energy, that can be both a source of escapism, but sometimes an escapism that allows you to deal with um, those things that are taboo to talk about or to feel or to acknowledge in you or in others. Um, so that is the Pluto Neptune configuration. And with Pluto Neptune, it's when you have to heal with something relating to Pluto Neptune. Pluto is about finding your power or letting go of something, and this is letting go. Okay, Neptune is about surrendering something, surrendering to the power of the highest good. And there is a question of when it is time to find your power or take your power, and when it is time to A, let go, or B, surrender. When is it, and with Neptune Pluto, it's going to be a mixture of finding your power in surrendering and then taking your power. It's like the configuration of these two. I spoke a lot about my being Me Too veteran, and before that, like before there was Me Too, and before there was Me Too, you didn't know anything. And to heal myself, I realized I have to speak and to voice it out, so that what's in the lower chakras goes through the throat chakra, so it gets out of the body. So of course you do ecstatic dance and you do workout, and there's a lot of work with the body that you do, to the books like the body keeps the score. So you need to release it from the body, but it was also to vocalize, to express your voice. It was more important to me to vocalize, to speak up. And of course, Pluto was in Capricorn. I didn't know it back then, but I was like, just somebody spoke. Like, I was both studying the topic of the structure of academia and its traditional, patriarchal structure of the church, and I was doing politics and governance. So I was like, oh, well, everybody who goes to politics goes through academia, but academia is not democratic. And so, how can we have a democratic regime when the institutions that train our democratic, representations a public figures is not democratic. So there was structure, and I was like, okay, like there is no point for me to go against this person that did so and so because he was a part of a net of people that basically try to recruit, like students to each other's whatnot, with funding research, of course, and um, and if you take out this person, let's say I complain, I was successful, everything okay, and they say, oh, you cannot teach in this institution anymore, blah blah blah. Okay, fine, but this is a web of people. I just took one person down who is not even in the highest rank in the web in this institution. So it's like I did nothing. Much better to talk about how it happens in the intergenerational aspect. Okay, the person that was hurting me was a good friend of someone who was a predator and was accused and found guilty and was a Pluto in Leo generation. So my predator was Pluto in Virgo generation. Okay, his instructor that was like his idol was Pluto in Leo generation. Okay, then you go back into the generations, you think, what happened? Where do they know this? Okay, this begins in their lives, and then in the army, and then in the academia, and then in the public sector, and then, in the government, and so on and so forth. And who do we train in academia? Are scientists, are juristic people, are psychologists? Blind spot, because I said, okay, I'm going to treat my own childhood trauma. Then I went to therapy. The therapist was predatory. But this is something that happens a lot. And we associate that to people re-victimizing themselves. Not necessarily. There is also structure of systems that is a contributor to that. Okay? And if the systems are structured in certain ways that make abuse of power inherent to the structure of the system, then you need to decentralize the system or to sort it algorithmically so that you're dealing person to person. A lot of the fear that people have is like, okay, when you're so afraid of, what will happen, what not, you're dealing with a web of people. But when that is in the air, when that is open, then much better is to talk about that than to talk about that person did that. Okay, but this is not what. It's not that person. I'm not saying that that person was not scary, but I probably wouldn't have interacted with that person in any other, circumstances. And B, um, there's a structure to things, and that structure is not operating. So the way I spoke about it was literally hardly volitional. It was a choice and not a choice. It's like to heal myself, I had to speak. But when I spoke up, I was afraid because I was saying things that I said, I don't know, maybe these are, I, I don't know. And this was the experience of a lot of us, those people who spoke before, there was a Me Too. And then 2017, poof, Me Too, blah, 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 and so on, which was still not easy. But that was like, oh, okay, I see. And funnily enough, I was talking about innovation. Um, they basically changed the advertisement from innovation to excellency in the application of the institution that I was studying. Like, it was that weird. And when I was speaking about innovation, I was thinking, okay, we have a problem of abuse of power. This problem is affecting science. It's affecting scientists. It's also related to plagiarism. It's also related to, our science just does not progress because of the way things are constructed. Um, and so we need to change that so we can do, science like Da Vinci did science, like, the great scientific revolutions. And I was like, no, science is not, because outside it looked like science is going so fast and so this, but inside you're like, you have one article that is sliced, it's like the salami, it's sliced to 10 articles so that you can get, your publishing, so that you can get recognized, and this is a financial system. So there's a lot of competition. And people are worried, like even from the perspectives of, I don't know, higher ranks in our department, it was like, well, they are, I don't know, Pluto Leo generation, beginning of Pluto Leo generation. They don't have any of the soft skills that, let's say, Pluto Sagittarius have. Well, I'm not saying Pluto Scorpio is like, I don't know about you, I'm not like soft skills. But they don't have any of the soft skills that the Pluto Libras had, that the Pluto Sagittarius have. And they need to compete, and they have women that are very attracted to, and they don't know how to communicate with them, so they don't also don't know how to communicate with women at home. And they were indoctrinated in all kinds of a lot of sexist, like really fucked up stuff. Like, did you know, for example, that in wars, the the peoples that are conquered are considered feminine. When I first learned about it, I thought, like, what, this is an invention, but no, people actually believed in this invention. Like, people actually treated these people like that, and I was like, oh my gosh, gender is like gender and colonialism. I was like, what is this? Like, what? This is so fucked up. But these are the generations, and you're like, okay, from their perspective, they feel intimidated. From our perspective, we feel fucking this, like, this is fucking scary. You know, like, let's put it in the air. Let's talk about this, and see how do we come up with, various departments, various fields, various study fields, and innovate solutions, structural changes, like stuff that need to happen. Um, so I was more interested in that. But the whole process was letting go to find my power, letting go to find my power. It was complete surrender. It's like I surrendered. I didn't know what's going to be. I spoke up and I didn't know what's going to be. And many of us did. I have a colleague that sued one of the universities, Haifa University. And so she sued, she won. The only thing she had to talk about, wanted to expose the name of the university. And so the university already paid her 130,000 shekels, which is quite a lot. It's like the biggest compensation that ever was in the cases of, like, Me Too related stuff. And then when she demanded to say the name of the university, they turned things over so that they required her to pay it back. It's like, we will allow you to say the name, we will allow you to speak up in your face. Just think about the bravery of speaking up in her face. But she needed that to heal. And but no, we're gonna take the money away from you. So what was that money? Nothing changed from this verdict to that verdict. Nothing changed except that you could speak the name of the university. And those are the types of stuff that are missing. But also the type of, what was the Me Too? It was about our power and sovereignty in our workplace, in our structural systems, in front of the government, and so on and so forth. How did we um, how did we fight for that, or take our sovereignty in our body? By surrendering into the process. So this is another tight segment of the Pluto Neptune story of finding your power, once surrendering to finding your power. It's beyond the personal. And when you think about stuff like gender rights, like sexual revolution, sexual rights, you're like, this is so funny. But also, if you think about an orgasm, it's about, you know, you find your power in letting go. This is an orgasm. It's a combination of something that is. Um, I don't think that it's correct to speak it in terms of outer planets, but just the concept of having a sense of direction, the contraction, the concentration, focus, and letting go. So soft focus, relaxed arousal. Those are the things that bring orgasmic experiences. So Pluto Neptune, it's not that Pluto Neptune is orgasm, no, but the analogy is the combination of what it takes to reach something, to transform something, to give birth to something. Also, childbirth is naturally it's an orgasm. You go into a trance state and then you orgasm the baby into life with the squirting and the floating and everything. It's like that is life bringing. Um, so to bring something into life, the orgasmic breathing of re- breathing in and birthing something has to do with a sense surrendering your sense of autonomy over you to get yourself back to you. And I just thought it's so funny. It's just so funny when you think about it logically. It's like it's so funny. What do you do? Fight for my right to say yes and no and maybe. How do you do it? Surrender my right to say yes and no and maybe. So fucking funny. Um, but those kind of circumstances we have with the Neptune Pluto. And the Neptune sextile Pluto is this harmonious, there is a harmony between two seemingly opposing things that is finding your power or letting go and surrendering. Letting go is an act of empowerment. Okay, if letting go is, for example, um, you move to another city, okay, and you're letting go of, I don't know, your old furniture, your old bed. You're letting go of your bed. You're selling it. You're letting it go, or you're donating it. You're letting it go. Okay, and that was the bed that you had, so and so, and where you sat to bring your homework, where you this, where you that. Okay, something you were very attached to. Neptune is surrendering. I don't know what will happen with the furniture. I don't know what will happen with this. I don't know what will happen with that. I'm surrendering that to a greater power. Okay, it's not letting go. It's surrendering. I surrender that to a higher power. I let something which is beyond the self decide for me. With Pluto, it's like, okay, had enough of this, or okay, it is time to let that go. Okay? It can also mean that something happens and you lose that something. But that is already beginning to be on the line of the connection with Neptune. Um, I try to think about, yeah. Neptune is also the sense of spiritual meaning for Plutonian experience that I talked about. Um, yeah, just think that I had all of this lying inside me, these 2 hours of talks. It took me time to express that. So this is a disorganized vlog of astrology, a randomized control test. So um, just something, that I wanted to do, and I didn't know what will I talk about. And I think I talked about a lot. We had Aries, the I am Aries E in Aries. We had Jupiter in Aries, and the square to the new moon we had in Capricorn. We had Mercury in Capricorn. The difficulties and frustrations of Mercury in a Saturn ruled sign, um, but also the necessity. And then we turn to the outer planets. Okay, we talked about the ruler of the stellium we have in Capricorn right now being in Aquarius. Then we talked about some Saturn stuff and Saturn Uranus. Then we talked about Pluto going into Aquarius and the Pluto trine uh, Uranus that is also going to coincide with an interesting sextile to Neptune from Pluto and Uranus in 2026. Um, some sciencey stuff and Pluto sextile Neptune so far, a little bit of Me Too, a little bit of childbirth and orgasms, and now we're good to go. So, is there any subject to talk about now? Oh, Rene Descartes and Kant, the Romanticism. I need to check. I don't think I have. Let's see what happens. No, if I do that, it's not working. Can I do like a share screen or something? What is that? Have filters. Glow. Glow, and I look. This is the glow filter, okay? I look diseased here. Bubbles. Yeah. Pretty. Okay, this is UFO. Dream. Neptune. Dream. And glamour. I don't think that that's very glamorous. H millimeter. Filmmaking. We also talked about that. A documentary. It looks so dark. And okay, that's interesting. Haunted house. Happy solstice. Oh, it was we passed the solstice. Merry Christmas. And sketch. Sketchy. So with this very sketchy ending, I will leave you. You can subscribe. I do have a Patreon that you can feed me, and you can find me also in my other channels, uh, which are three of them right now. So yeah, I'll find a way to pin the channels there, and I'll see you in my next video. That was Spirit of Matter, randomized talk about astrology. Randomized control talk. This is how it should be called, I think. Bye then.